While I was closing a $13 million deal in Europe, my son sold my BMW to pay for a luxury trip to Bora Bora with his wife. When I returned, my daughter-in-law smiled smugly and said, "Now you'll have to ask me for rides." I responded with just 6 words. I bought a jet, not a car. The look on her face was worth every penny of the $7 million I'd just spent. Let me back up. My name is Isabel Reynolds, and at 58, I've spent my life building Reynolds real estate from a small local agency into an international powerhouse. If you're watching, please like and subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where in the world you're from. My husband Robert and I started the company together 35 years ago with nothing but determination and a small business loan. When he died 8 years ago from a sudden heart attack, I buried my grief in work, expanding our company further than we'd ever dreamed. The vintage BMW convertible had been Robert's final gift to me on our 30th anniversary, just 3 months before his death. "Something beautiful for my beautiful wife," he'd said, handing me the keys to the meticulously restored 1967 midnight blue convertible. For all those sunset drives we've always talked about taking, we only got to take 2 of those sunset drives before he was gone. I kept that car immaculate, driving it only on special occasions, Robert's birthday, our anniversary, days when I needed to feel him close. It wasn't just transportation. It was a tangible connection to the man who had been my partner in every sense of the word. The Milan deal had been in the works for 18 months, a mixed-use development that would put Reynolds real estate firmly on the European map. I'd flown over to handle the final negotiations personally, something I rarely did anymore since promoting Tyler to Chief Operating Officer 3 years ago. "You deserve this win, Mom," he'd said, hugging me at the airport. "Go close it. I'll handle everything here." Everything, apparently, included selling my most treasured possession without my knowledge or consent. I returned home triumphant, jet-lagged, but elated. The contract was signed, the press release scheduled, the champagne chilling in my office for the team celebration on Monday. I took an Uber from the airport, planning to surprise Tyler and his wife Olivia with the news over dinner. The first sign something was wrong came when I pulled into my driveway and saw the empty space in the garage where my BMW should have been. Probably in the shop, I thought, dismissing the momentary concern. Tyler sometimes arranged maintenance for me when I traveled, one of the few thoughtful things he still did without being asked. I let myself in, calling out as I entered the house. "Tyler? Olivia? I'm home." No answer, but I could hear voices from the back deck. I made my way through the house, noticing immediately that something felt off. Little things out of place, an unfamiliar shopping bag on the counter with a Bora Bora logo. Sunglasses I didn't recognize. When I stepped onto the deck, I found them lounging by the pool, Olivia's bronzed skin glowing with a fresh tan, Tyler nursing what appeared to be his 3rd or 4th beer, judging by the empties beside him. "Mom!" He startled, spilling beer down his shirt as he stood too quickly. "You're back early. We weren't expecting you until tomorrow." "I caught an earlier flight," I explained, accepting his awkward hug. "The deal closed faster than expected. Complete success." "That's great," he said, though his eyes wouldn't meet mine. Olivia didn't even stand, just lazily waved from her lounge chair. "Welcome back, Isabel." 3 years of marriage, and she still wouldn't call me anything warmer than my first name. Not Mom, not even Mrs. Reynolds. Just Isabel, like we were casual acquaintances at a cocktail party. "Where's my car?" I asked, the unease growing stronger. I didn't see the BMW in the garage. The silence that followed was answer enough. Tyler ran his hand through his hair, a nervous tic he'd had since childhood. "About that, there's something we need to discuss. We took a little trip while you were gone," Olivia interjected, sliding her designer sunglasses to the top of her head. "Bora Bora. It was divine. Want to see the photos?" Without waiting for my response, she thrust her phone into my hands, swiping through images of overwater bungalows, pristine beaches, and sunset cocktails. 2 full weeks. The best resort on the island. Private plunge pool, personal butler, the works. I handed the phone back, my patience thinning. "Lovely. Now where is my car, Tyler?" He swallowed hard. The opportunity came up suddenly. Olivia's always wanted to go to Bora Bora, and there was this last-minute cancellation at the St. Regis. "Where is my car?" I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. "We sold it," Olivia answered casually, as if announcing they'd ordered takeout. "Tyler said you hardly ever drive it anyway. Such a waste. keeping a classic like that just sitting in a garage. The world seemed to tilt beneath me. You sold my car? My BMW? Without asking me? Tyler at least had the decency to look ashamed. I was going to tell you, Mom. I was going to replace it as soon as the commission from the Westlake project came through next month. It was just sitting there, and we needed— You didn't need anything, I cut him off, ice in my veins. You wanted. There's a difference. Oh, come on, Isabel, Olivia sighed dramatically. It's just a car. You can buy another one. God knows you have the money. I turned to look at this woman. This stranger my son had married after a whirlwind 6-month romance. Former model, current lifestyle influencer with more followers than sense. I'd never understood what Tyler saw in her beyond the obvious physical attraction, but I'd kept my reservations to myself, determined not to be the stereotypical meddling mother-in-law. Perhaps that had been my first mistake. That, just a car, was the last gift my husband gave me before he died, I said quietly. Your father-in-law, Tyler, the man whose name is on the company that pays for your lifestyle. Tyler blanched. Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't think— No, you didn't think, I agreed. Who did you sell it to? He named a high-end dealership in Beverly Hills, specializing in luxury and vintage automobiles. I made a mental note to call them first thing in the morning, though I knew the chances of recovering the car were slim. Olivia, remarkably, seemed unperturbed by the tension. She stretched languidly on her chaise lounge, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Well, look at the bright side, Isabel. Now that you don't have a car, you'll have to ask me for rides. The sheer audacity of it, the entitlement, the disrespect, momentarily took my breath away. In that moment, I saw with perfect clarity what I had allowed to happen. My grief over Robert, my guilt over working long hours during Tyler's childhood, my desperate desire to keep some semblance of family now that Robert was gone. All of it had led me to enable this behavior, to finance this lifestyle, to permit this disrespect. No more. Something must have shown in my face because Tyler took a step back. Mom? I smiled, a calm descending over me that I hadn't felt in years. Actually, I won't be asking for rides. Oh? Olivia raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. Planning to use Uber from now on? Or will you finally break down and hire a driver like we've been telling you to? Neither, I replied, picking up my purse. I bought a jet, not a car. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the birds seemed to stop chirping. A what? Tyler stammered. A jet. A Gulfstream G280, to be precise. The Milan deal required so much international travel that I decided it was time. It's being delivered next week. I turned toward the house. I'll be packing a few things. I've decided to spend some time at the Manhattan apartment while I reconsider certain arrangements. Olivia's smug expression had crumbled into open-mouthed shock. Tyler looked like he might be sick. Mom, wait, he called after me. What do you mean, reconsider arrangements? I paused at the door. It means, Tyler, that I'm reconsidering many things. Your position at the company, your living situation in my guest house, and most importantly, my willingness to fund a lifestyle that brings me nothing but disrespect in return. As I walked away, I heard Olivia's furious whisper, A jet? She bought a fucking jet and you sold her car for our vacation? For the first time since Robert died, I felt something like freedom unfurling within me. A jet, not a car. A future designed for my desires, not theirs. A life reclaimed, one boundary at a time. And I was just getting started. The Manhattan apartment felt like a stranger's home when I first walked in. I'd purchased it 5 years ago as an investment property and potential base for our East Coast expansion. But I'd only stayed here a handful of times, usually for quick business trips. The furnishings were elegant but impersonal, chosen by an interior designer with instructions to make it suitable for entertaining clients. Now, as I rolled my suitcase into the spacious foyer, I realized this place was exactly what I needed. A blank slate, no memories of Robert. No evidence of Tyler and Olivia's intrusion into my life. Just clean lines, empty spaces, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. My phone had been ringing incessantly since I'd left California. Tyler mostly, with a few calls from Olivia and several from the office. I silenced it, not ready to engage with any of them yet. First, I needed to think, really think, about how I'd arrived at this point. I poured myself a generous glass of wine from the bottle I'd picked up on the way from the airport and settled onto the pristine white sofa, kicking off my shoes and looking out at the New York skyline as twilight descended. How had I allowed things to deteriorate so badly? When had my son transformed from the sweet boy who made me handprint Mother's Day cards into a man who would sell my most precious possession without a second thought? When had I become so desperate for family connection that I'd tolerate such blatant disrespect? The answers weren't comfortable, but as the wine loosened the tight knot of anger in my chest, I forced myself to confront them. After Robert died, I'd thrown myself into work as a shield against grief, inadvertently pushing Tyler away during a time when we should have been supporting each other. By the time I came up for air 2 years later, he'd dropped out of business school and was drifting between half-hearted entrepreneurial ventures, burning through his trust fund with remarkable efficiency. Instead of allowing him to face the natural consequences of his choices, I'd bailed him out, repeatedly. Hired him at Reynolds despite his lack of qualifications or genuine interest, promoted him to keep him engaged, overlooked his 3-hour lunches and missed meetings, paid off his credit cards when he maxed them out, provided the down payment for his first house, then bought him and Olivia a larger one when she complained the first wasn't suitable for entertaining, all because I couldn't bear to lose anyone else after losing Robert. And what had it gotten me? A son who felt entitled to sell my most treasured possession, a daughter-in-law who mocked me in my own home, a company where my authority was undermined by the special treatment I gave my increasingly incompetent son. My phone buzzed with a text message, briefly illuminating the screen before fading to black. Tyler. Mom, we need to talk. Please call me back. I can explain everything. Explain what exactly? That he needed my BMW to finance a luxury vacation more than I needed the last tangible connection to my husband? That his wife's desire for an Instagram-worthy trip trumped any consideration of my feelings? I took another sip of wine, making no move toward my phone. For the first time in 8 years, I had clarity, the painful kind that comes with recognizing your own complicity in your unhappiness. The intercom buzzed, startling me from my thoughts. The doorman's voice came through the speaker. Ms. Reynolds, there's a Ms. Harriet Winters here to see you. She says you're expecting her? I wasn't expecting anyone, and the name wasn't immediately familiar, though something about it tugged at my memory. Please ask her to wait a moment, I replied, quickly checking my calendar to see if I'd forgotten an appointment. Nothing was scheduled until my meeting with our New York office tomorrow. Curiosity got the better of me. I pressed the intercom again. Send her up, please. A few minutes later, a sharp knock at the door revealed a tall, elegant black woman in her early 60s, impeccably dressed in a tailored pantsuit, her silver-streaked hair cut in a stylish bob. Isabel Reynolds, she said with a warm smile. It's been what, 20 years? Recognition dawned as I took in her face, mentally subtracting 2 decades. Harriet? Harriet Winters from business school? The very same, she confirmed, accepting my startled invitation to enter. Though it's Dr. Winters now. I finally finished that PhD we used to talk about. Memories flooded back, late nights studying in the library, dreams shared over cheap wine in our dorm room, promises to start businesses that would revolutionize our respective industries. Harriet had been my closest friend during those 2 intense years of business school, before life and geography pulled us in different directions. How on earth did you find me? I asked, leading her to the living room. And how did you know I was in New York? She laughed, a rich sound that immediately transported me back to our younger days. Social media is both a blessing and a curse. When Reynolds Real Estate announced its expansion into the European market this morning, complete with a photo of you signing the Milan contract, it appeared on my LinkedIn feed. I recognized you instantly and did some digging. That doesn't explain how you knew I was here, not in California, I pointed out, offering her a glass of wine, which she accepted with a nod. That was admittedly more detective work than social media. I called your corporate office, pretending to be an old friend, which is true, and your assistant mentioned you'd unexpectedly decided to work from the New York office this week. After that, it was just a matter of having my driver wait outside until you arrived. I raised an eyebrow. That's borderline stalking, Harriet. That's entrepreneurial persistence, she corrected with a grin. A quality you always admired in me, as I recall. She wasn't wrong. Harriet had always been fearless, determined, slightly outrageous in her pursuit of her goals. It was one of the things I'd most loved about our friendship. So, she continued, settling onto the sofa beside me. The question is, why is Isabel Reynolds hiding in New York the day after closing the biggest deal of her career instead of celebrating with her team in California? I hesitated, not accustomed to confiding in anyone, especially someone I hadn't seen in 2 decades. But something about Harriet's direct gaze broke through my usual reserve. My son sold my car while I was in Europe, I said simply. My late husband's last gift to me. He sold it to finance a vacation with his wife. Harriet's expression shifted from curiosity to outrage. He did what? Once I started talking, I couldn't stop. The whole story poured out: Robert's death, my retreat into work, Tyler's transformation from promising student to entitled adult, my enabling behavior, Olivia's disrespect, and finally, the BMW and the private jet. You bought a jet? Harriet burst out laughing when I reached that part of the story. Oh, that is magnificent. I would have paid good money to see their faces. Despite myself, I smiled. It was rather satisfying. I imagined so. She studied me over the rim of her wine glass. So what now? You're hiding out in New York, avoiding your son's calls, and reconsidering everything, I admitted. My relationship with Tyler, his role in the company, my own future. Harriet nodded thoughtfully. When my husband left me for his 24-year-old research assistant 10 years ago, I had a similar reckoning. Painful, but necessary. What did you do? I asked, genuinely curious. A slow smile spread across her face. I rebuilt my life on my terms, finished my PhD, started my consulting firm, bought a house in Paris where I spend 3 months each year, adopted 2 rescue greyhounds, learned to tango. She shrugged elegantly. I stopped living for others and started living for myself. Just like that? I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. Not just like anything. It was terrifying, messy. Some days I wasn't sure I'd make it through. But Isabel, she leaned forward, her eyes intense. It was worth every difficult moment. Because now, at 63, I'm living exactly the life I want. Not the one my ex-husband wanted, or my parents expected, or society prescribed. Mine. Something loosened in my chest at her words. A tension I hadn't even realized I was carrying. I don't even know what I want anymore, I confessed. I've been so focused on the company, on Tyler, on preserving what little family I have left. Then that's your first task, Harriet declared, setting down her glass with a decisive click. Figuring out what Isabel wants, separate from Reynolds' real estate, separate from being Tyler's mother or Robert's widow. And how exactly do I do that? She grinned, a mischievous expression that instantly shaved decades off her face. You start by having dinner with an old friend who's in town for only 2 more days. Then you consider coming to Paris next month when I return there. The rest? She waved a hand expansively. We'll figure out as we go. For the first time since discovering my BMW was gone, I felt something other than anger and betrayal. Something that felt dangerously like hope. Dinner sounds perfect, I said, reaching for my phone to silence it as Tyler's name flashed on the screen yet again. Let me get my coat. As we headed out into the New York evening, Harriet linked her arm through mine with the easy familiarity of our college days. You know, I always thought you'd be the one to buy a private jet before me. Some things never change. I laughed, surprising myself with the genuine sound. Some things do change, though, and I'm starting to think that might be exactly what I need. Behind us, my phone continued to buzz silently on the coffee table. My son's increasingly desperate messages going unanswered as I stepped into the first evening of my new life. 3 days into my New York sabbatical, as I'd begun thinking of it, my temporary peace was shattered by a commotion at my apartment door. Ms. Reynolds? I'm sorry, came the doorman's flustered voice over the intercom. Your son insisted on coming up. I tried to call first, but it's all right, Frank. I sighed, already hearing Tyler's voice in the background. You can send him up. I took a deep breath, straightening my shoulders as I prepared for the confrontation I'd been avoiding. Part of me had known this moment was inevitable. Tyler wasn't likely to accept my sudden boundary setting without a fight, especially when his comfortable lifestyle hung in the balance. When I opened the door, my son looked nothing like the polished COO of Reynolds Real Estate. His hair was disheveled, his eyes bloodshot, his typically immaculate clothing rumpled as if he'd slept in it on the red-eye flight. Mom, he said, relief evident in his voice. Thank God. You haven't been answering your phone. I thought I was worried. I'm fine, I replied coolly, stepping back to allow him entry. As you can see. He moved past me into the apartment, his eyes darting around as if expecting to find evidence of some crisis that would explain my behavior. Finding none, he turned back to me, confusion written across his features. What's going on? You disappear without a word, ignore all my calls, cancel meetings. This isn't like you. Isn't it? I closed the door and leaned against it, arms crossed. Or is it simply not what you've come to expect from me? There's a difference. His brow furrowed. If this is about the BMW, this is about everything the BMW represents, I corrected him. Your sense of entitlement, your disregard for boundaries, your assumption that my resources are yours to commandeer whenever you want something. That's not fair, he protested, running a hand through his already disheveled hair. I made one mistake. One? I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. Tyler, selling my car wasn't one mistake. It was the culmination of a pattern that's been building for years. A pattern I've enabled by constantly cushioning you from the consequences of your actions. He had the grace to look uncomfortable. I said I was sorry. I'm going to make it right. I've already called the dealership, but they sold the BMW to a collector in Germany. I'm trying to track him down, offer to buy it back. That's not the point, I interrupted, moving past him into the living room. You can't undo this with money or apologies. Some things, once broken, stay broken. What are you saying? Alarm crept into his voice as he followed me. Mom, you're scaring me. I turned to face him fully. Good. You should be scared, because I've made some decisions that are going to significantly impact your life. His face paled. What decisions? Effective immediately. You're on unpaid leave from Reynolds. I've appointed Marissa Chen as interim COO. Marissa? He sputtered. My assistant? Your former assistant, I corrected. Who, by the way, has been covering for your incompetence for the past 2 years. The board voted unanimously this morning to approve her promotion. Tyler sank onto the sofa, looking stunned. You can't do this. I'm family. I'm your son. Which is precisely why I should have held you to a higher standard, not a lower one. I remained standing, maintaining the physical and psychological advantage. You've been coasting on nepotism and my reluctance to admit that my son isn't qualified for his position. This is insane, he muttered, then looked up sharply. Wait, the board voted? You held a board meeting without me? I'm on the board. You were removed from the board yesterday, I informed him, keeping my voice steady despite the turmoil I felt. This confrontation was necessary but excruciating. Your attendance record alone was grounds for dismissal. Not to mention your consistent failure to review materials before meetings. He stared at me as if I'd transformed into a stranger before his eyes. In some ways, I supposed I had. There's more, I continued. I've instructed my attorney to draw up eviction papers for the guest house. You and Olivia have 30 days to find alternative accommodation. You're kicking us out? His voice cracked with disbelief. Where are we supposed to go? How are we supposed to pay for it with me on unpaid leave? That's for you to figure out, I replied. Most adults manage to secure housing without their parents' assistance. I suggest you start by looking at properties within your actual budget, not the inflated one you've been operating on with my financial support. Tyler stood abruptly, anger replacing shock. This is about Olivia, isn't it? You've never liked her. You're punishing me because of her. This has nothing to do with Olivia, though her attitude certainly hasn't helped matters. I sighed, suddenly tired of the conversation. This is about me, finally recognizing that I've been hurting you by helping you. Real love sometimes means allowing people to face the natural consequences of their choices. Real love? He repeated incredulously. You call this love? Destroying my career? Making me homeless? Your career was your responsibility to build, not mine to provide. And you're hardly homeless. You're a 32-year-old man with an Ivy League education and a healthy trust fund. The fact that you're characterizing these basic adult expectations as some sort of cruel punishment only proves my point. He paced the room, agitation evident in every movement. This is temporary, right? Some kind of lesson you're trying to teach me? Once I've learned it, everything goes back to normal? The hopeful note in his voice nearly broke my resolve, triggering the maternal instinct to protect and comfort that had led me astray for so many years. But Harriet's words echoed in my mind. I stopped living for others and started living for myself. No, Tyler, this is the new normal. I will always love you as my son, but our relationship needs to evolve into one between independent adults, not provider and dependent. And if I refuse to accept this, he challenged, desperation edging his tone, that's your choice, but it won't change the reality of your employment status or housing situation. I moved toward the door, signaling that our conversation was concluding. I suggest you use your flight back to California to start planning your next steps. You're not coming back with me? No. I'm staying in New York for the foreseeable future. The Milan deal requires significant attention, and I've neglected our East Coast operations for too long. He stood rooted to the spot, looking lost in a way that tugged at my heart despite my determination. Mom, please, don't do this. We can work it out. I'll make it up to you. This isn't about making it up to me, Tyler. It's about you building a life that isn't dependent on my resources or approval. I opened the apartment door. I love you enough to stop enabling behavior that ultimately hurts both of us. Someday, I hope you'll understand that. Olivia's pregnant, he blurted out, desperation clear in his voice. We just found out. That's part of why we took the trip, to celebrate before telling everyone. You're going to be a grandmother. You can't just cut us off now. I froze, the news hitting me like a physical blow. A grandchild, the family extension I'd secretly longed for but never pushed, knowing Tyler and Olivia's reluctance to compromise their lifestyle with children. For a moment, I wavered. Could I really maintain these new boundaries, knowing my grandchild's security might be affected? Wasn't family ultimately more important than teaching Tyler a difficult lesson? Then I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw the calculation behind the desperation in his eyes. This announcement, which should have been joyous, was being wielded as a weapon, a last-ditch effort to manipulate me into maintaining the status quo. Congratulations, I said finally, my voice softening slightly. I'm happy for you both, but my decision stands. If anything, your impending parenthood makes it more crucial that you learn to stand on your own feet. Your child deserves parents who model responsibility and independence, not entitlement. You're unbelievable, he muttered, moving toward the door. Wait until the rest of the family hears about this. Uncle David, Aunt Sarah, they won't stand for you treating me this way. I smiled sadly. I've already spoken with them. They agree these changes are long overdue. That final blow seemed to deflate him completely. He paused at the threshold, turning back with one last attempt. And what about my inheritance? Are you cutting me out of your will too? The naked concern for his financial interests, even in this moment of family rupture, confirmed I was making the right decision. Painful though it was, that depends entirely on you, Tyler. On the man you choose to become from this point forward. I gestured to the elevator. Safe flight home. After he left, I leaned against the closed door, tears finally breaking free to stream down my face. Setting these boundaries was the right thing, the necessary thing, but that didn't make it any less agonizing. I loved my son. Despite his flaws, despite his betrayal, I would always love him. But love without respect was unsustainable, and the path to restoring that respect required this painful reset. My phone buzzed with a text from Harriet, just checking in. How did it go with Tyler? About as well as could be expected, I replied. He played the grandchild card. Her response came quickly. Ouch. Standing firm? Yes. Hardest thing I've ever done. Most worthwhile things are. Dinner tonight to celebrate your backbone? I know a little place in Soho that makes a martini strong enough to fortify even the wobbliest resolve. I smiled through my tears, grateful for her understanding and support. Perfect. I'll need it. Apparently, I'm going to be a grandmother. Congratulations. All the joy of babies with the blessed ability to give them back when they cry. Another excellent reason to reclaim your life. Grandmothers should be having too much fun for babysitting duties. Her perspective shifted something in me, transforming the news from a complication in my plan to a joyful addition to my evolving life. A grandchild didn't have to mean sacrificing my newfound independence. It could mean expanding my capacity for love while maintaining healthy boundaries. As I moved away from the door to prepare for my dinner with Harriet, I caught sight of my reflection in the hallway mirror. The woman staring back at me looked tired but resolute, sad but determined. A woman finally choosing herself after decades of putting everyone else first. A jet, not a car, I whispered to my reflection. reminding myself of the moment when everything had changed. The moment when I'd finally understood that I deserved more than the scraps of respect my son and daughter-in-law deigned to throw my way. My phone rang. Marissa Chen, the newly appointed interim COO, calling for guidance on a contract issue. I answered, pushing thoughts of Tyler and his manipulation aside for now. There would be time to process the emotional fallout of our confrontation later. Right now, I had a company to run, a new life to build, and a martini date with an old friend who understood exactly what I was going through. For the first time in 8 years, I felt like I was truly moving forward, not just going through the motions of a life shaped by grief and obligation. And despite the pain, despite the uncertainty, it felt like freedom. The martinis with Harriet proved to be exactly what I needed: strong, clarifying, and accompanied by the kind of unvarnished truth that only comes from someone with nothing invested in your decisions. We laughed more than I had in years, reminiscing about our business school days and catching up on the decades between. "You know what Robert would say about all this, don't you?" Harriet asked as we shared a decadent chocolate dessert. I tensed slightly at the mention of my late husband. "What? About damn time, Izzy," she said, perfectly mimicking Robert's gruff affection. "He always said you were too soft on Tyler." A surprised laugh escaped me. "He did?" Every time we spoke, which wasn't often enough, but still. She pointed her fork at me. "He worried about it, Isabel. Worried that Tyler would never develop the backbone needed to run the company you two built." I stared at her, stunned. "Robert never said anything like that to me." "Of course not. You were already insecure about your parenting because of all the time you spent building the business. He didn't want to add to that." She shrugged. "But he told me, the last time I saw him at that conference in Chicago, about 6 months before he died, said Tyler was showing all the signs of becoming one of those entitled rich kids who ruins everything his parents built." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. All these years, I'd been compensating for what I thought were my failures as a mother, trying to make up for the business trips and missed school events. And all along, Robert had seen the danger in my overcompensation. "Why didn't you tell me this before now?" I asked, not angry, but genuinely curious. Harriet sipped her espresso. "Would you have believed me? Or would you have dismissed it as me misunderstanding Robert, or remembering incorrectly, or having some agenda of my own?" She was right. In my grief, I'd clung to a narrative that cast me as the neglectful mother and Tyler as the wounded son. It had given my guilt somewhere to land, my grief something to shape itself around. The truth, that Robert had recognized our son's character flaws early on, was too uncomfortable to accept until now. "I've been such a fool," I murmured. "No," Harriet corrected firmly. "You've been human, grieving, loving, trying your best with the emotional tools you had available, but now you're seeing clearly, and that's what matters." Back in my apartment that night, I found myself drawn to the small photograph of Robert I'd placed on the bedside table, the only personal touch in the otherwise anonymous space. His smile beamed at me from behind the glass, eyes crinkled at the corners in the way I'd always loved. "I'm sorry," I whispered to his image. "I should have been stronger sooner, but I'm fixing it now, I promise." My phone chimed with an email notification. I almost ignored it, but the sender's name caught my eye. Davis Klein, my attorney. The subject line read simply, "Urgent, Tyler inquiry." With a sense of foreboding, I opened the message. "Isabel, Tyler contacted me today requesting information about your estate planning, specifically regarding the trust arrangements and your current will. He claimed you had asked him to verify some details in light of recent changes. When I informed him that I could not discuss such matters without your explicit authorization, he became quite agitated. I thought you should be aware of this attempted end run around your privacy. Given our conversation yesterday regarding potential updates to your estate documents, this timing seems suspicious at best. Call me tomorrow if you wish to discuss. Best regards." Davis' cold anger washed through me, replacing the melancholy nostalgia of moments before. Not even 24 hours after our confrontation, and Tyler was already trying to determine how my death might benefit him financially. The calculated nature of it, contacting my attorney under false pretenses, attempting to circumvent proper channels, revealed a depth of entitlement and manipulation I hadn't wanted to acknowledge. I typed a quick reply, thanking Davis for his discretion and confirming I had authorized no such inquiry. Then I sent a text to Marissa Chen. Please restrict Tyler's access to all company financial systems immediately. Change all passwords, revoke all credentials. Security Protocol Alpha. Her response came almost instantly, despite the late hour. Already done after your call this afternoon. Anticipating this move, I smiled grimly. There was a reason I'd promoted Marissa. She had the foresight and decisiveness Tyler had always lacked. Another text appeared, this one from Olivia. We need to talk. Tyler isn't handling this well. Think about your grandchild. The emotional manipulation was so transparent it was almost laughable. I deleted the message without responding, then blocked her number. Tyler's would be next if he continued down this path. Making my way to the expansive windows overlooking the city, I took in the glittering Manhattan skyline. From this height, everything looked orderly, purposeful, beautiful in its complexity. If only human relationships could be so clearly defined. My reflection stared back at me from the glass, a woman at a crossroads, finally seeing the map clearly after years of fog. The pain of Tyler's betrayal, both the original sale of my car and this latest attempt to access my will, was still acute, but beneath it ran a current of something stronger. Resolve. I would not be manipulated. I would not be guilted. I would not surrender the peace I'd fought so hard to reclaim. Not even for my child. Not even for my grandchild. A text from Harriet broke into my thoughts. Breakfast tomorrow? I know a place that makes the kind of Bloody Mary that puts everything in perspective. Perfect, I replied. I have news about Tyler you won't believe. Oh, I'll believe it, came her quick response. I'm just glad you finally do too. I turned away from the window, from my reflection, from the glittering city that seemed to offer endless possibilities. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new attempts at manipulation from Tyler and Olivia, new decisions about my company and my future. But for the first time since selling my car, I felt fully equipped to face them. The jet, it turned out, wasn't just a status symbol to put my entitled daughter-in-law in her place. It was a metaphor for the life I was reclaiming, elevated, unbound by others' expectations, navigating above the turbulence of emotional manipulation. A jet, not a car, I whispered to myself as I prepared for bed. 6 words that had changed everything, and I was just beginning to soar. Breakfast with Harriet the following morning proved even more revelatory than our dinner. As I recounted Tyler's attempt to access my will information, her expression shifted from outrage to calculation. He's panicking, she observed, stirring her Bloody Mary, which means he'll get sloppier before he gets smarter. What do you mean? Think about it. He's just lost his cushy job, his free housing, and potentially his inheritance. He's desperate, and desperate people make mistakes. She took a sip of her drink, considering. What else has he had access to? Bank accounts, investment portfolios, property deeds? A cold weight settled in my stomach. Everything. After Robert died, I added Tyler as a signatory on most accounts for emergency purposes. The properties are protected in the company name, but not all of them? Harriet guessed shrewdly. The house in Aspen is in my personal name, I admitted. Robert and I bought it before we created the corporate structure for asset protection. Harriet pulled out her phone and began typing rapidly. Call your bank now, and your investment manager. Right now, Isabel. Something in her tone brooked no argument. I stepped away from our table, making the calls with growing dread. By the time I returned, my hands were shaking. He tried to access my investment account this morning, I confirmed, sinking back into my chair. The manager flagged it because the request was for a 7-figure transfer to an unfamiliar account. Harriet nodded grimly. And the Aspen property? Nothing yet, but I've put a freeze on any transactions related to it. Good. She signaled the waiter for the check. Now we need to get ahead of this. No more reactive measures. It's time to play offense, not defense. Ah, what did you have in mind? A slow, dangerous smile spread across her face. Remember Miranda Jeffries from business school? The one who went into corporate security after that scandal with her father's company? Vaguely, I said, trying to place the name with a face from 2 decades ago. Wasn't she the one who caught the CFO embezzling? Exactly. She now runs one of the top private investigation firms in the country, specializing in white-collar crime and digital forensics. Harriet finished her drink with a flourish, and she owes me a favor. 3 hours later, I sat in a sleek midtown office across from Miranda Jeffries, a striking woman in her late 50s with penetrating green eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that instantly inspired confidence. Let me get this straight, she said after I'd explained the situation. Your son sold your car without permission, potentially attempted to access your financial accounts without authorization, and tried to obtain information about your will under false pretenses? Yes, I confirmed, the bald summation making it sound even worse than I'd allowed myself to acknowledge. And you want to know what else he might have done that you don't yet know about? Exactly. Miranda tapped her pen against her notepad thoughtfully. This will require a thorough digital forensic investigation. We'll need to examine all accounts he's had access to, review communication records, trace any unusual transactions from the past few years, not just recent activity. How long will that take? I asked, already dreading what might be uncovered. For a preliminary assessment, about a week. For a complete picture, likely a month. She fixed me with a direct gaze. I need to be clear, Isabel. Once we start digging, we can't unknow what we find. Are you prepared for what this might reveal about your son? The question struck at the heart of my hesitation. Was I ready to know the full extent of Tyler's betrayal? Could our relationship survive whatever Miranda's investigation uncovered? But the alternative, remaining willfully ignorant while he potentially undermined my company, my finances, my very legacy, was unthinkable. I need to know, I said firmly, whatever it is. Then we'll begin immediately. She made a note on her pad. One more thing. Given the nature of this investigation, I strongly recommend you avoid any contact with Tyler or Olivia until we have our initial findings. Any warning, any hint that you're looking into their activities could give them time to cover their tracks. The thought of cutting off all communication with my son, even temporarily, sent a pang through my heart. But Miranda's advice made logical sense. Understood, I agreed reluctantly. After signing the necessary paperwork and providing Miranda's team with access to my accounts, I left her office feeling simultaneously relieved and terrified. Whatever Tyler had done beyond selling my car would soon be exposed to the harsh light of professional scrutiny. How do you feel? Harriet asked as we walked back toward my apartment through the crisp autumn air. Like I'm betraying my own child, I admitted. And yet he betrayed you first, she finished for me. Multiple times, apparently. Does that justify my response? Harriet stopped walking, turning to face me directly. Isabel, listen to me. This isn't about revenge or punishment. This is about protecting yourself and everything you've built. If Tyler has been misusing his access to your accounts, that's not just a family matter. It's potentially criminal. You have a responsibility to yourself, to your employees, to your legacy, to uncover the truth. Put that way, my course of action seemed not just justified, but necessary. Still, a mother's heart is a complex thing. Even as I nodded in agreement with Harriet's assessment, part of me hoped Miranda's investigation would reveal nothing more than the violations I already knew about. Back at my apartment, I found myself restless, unable to concentrate on work despite the mounting emails from the office. My phone buzzed with another text from Tyler, the fifth since our confrontation yesterday. Mom, please call me. This has gone too far. Olivia's upset, I'm upset, everyone's upset. We need to talk. I started to type a response, then remembered Miranda's warning about maintaining distance until the investigation yielded results. Instead, I set the phone aside and moved to the window, gazing out at Central Park below. How had we reached this point? What series of choices, mine and Tyler's, had led us down this path of mutual distrust and wounded feelings? And more importantly, was there any way back from this precipice, or had the foundation of our relationship been irrevocably damaged? My phone rang. Not Tyler this time, but Marissa Chen. Isabel, she began without preamble. We have a situation at the office. Tyler showed up this morning demanding access to his email and files. When security denied him entry based on your instructions, he became disruptive. I closed my eyes, imagining the scene. Define disruptive. He threatened to call the police, claiming illegal termination. He told the staff you were having a mental breakdown triggered by grief over the car. And when that didn't work, he attempted to use his old key card to access the executive floor anyway. Her voice remained professional, but I could hear the underlying tension. Security had to escort him from the building, just when I thought the situation couldn't get worse. I'm sorry, Marissa. You shouldn't have to deal with this. It's part of the job, she replied matter-of-factly. But there's something else you should know. After Tyler left, I had it do a routine check of his computer activities over the past month, standard protocol for departing executives. And I prompted when she paused. He downloaded a significant amount of client information, contract details, and financial projections 2 days before you returned from Milan. The timing seems deliberate, I finished for her. As if he knew his position might be in jeopardy after what he did with my car. Exactly. Marissa's tone grew concerned. Isabel, this goes beyond family drama. This is potential corporate espionage if he intends to use that information elsewhere. The pieces were falling into place with sickening clarity. Tyler's desperate attempts to access my accounts, his interest in my will, his download of confidential company information, all pointed to someone preparing for war, not seeking reconciliation. I've already engaged someone to investigate his financial activities, I told Marissa. Add this to their list. And Marissa, change the locks at headquarters. Today, after hanging up, I stood motionless in the center of my apartment, the magnitude of what was happening finally hitting me full force. This wasn't just about a car anymore, or even about boundaries. This was about my son actively working against me, against the company his father and I had built, against his own future. My phone buzzed again, an email notification. When I checked the sender, a chill ran through me. It was from Jennifer Preston, society columnist for the New York Times, with the subject line, "Request for comment, Reynolds family drama." The walls were closing in. Whatever privacy I'd hoped to maintain around this family conflict was about to be shattered. The question now was whether I would let Tyler control the narrative or whether I would fight back with the full force of the truth. For the first time in my life, I was facing the possibility that my son might not just be misguided or entitled, but actively malicious. The thought brought no satisfaction, only a bone-deep sorrow for what might have been, and steely resolve for what must now be done. I opened Jennifer Preston's email with trembling fingers, the subject line alone sending adrenaline coursing through my system. Ms. Reynolds, I've received information about recent dramatic changes at Reynolds Real Estate, including your son Tyler's sudden departure from his executive position and allegations of financial impropriety within your family. Given your company's high profile and the Milan expansion, this story is of significant public interest. Would you care to comment on 1. Tyler Reynolds' removal from the company, 2. Reports that he sold your personal property without permission, 3. Your purchase of a private jet following these events. 4. Rumors of an ongoing investigation into potential misappropriation of company resources. I'm filing this story for tomorrow's edition and would appreciate your response by 5 p.m. today. Regards, Jennifer Preston, Society and Business, New York Times. My first instinct was panic. The carefully constructed public image of Reynolds Real Estate, of our family, was about to be shattered on the pages of one of the world's most prominent newspapers. My second instinct, following close behind, was fury. There was only one way Jennifer Preston could have obtained this information so quickly. Tyler had gone to the press. My phone rang. Harriet. I just got a call from Jennifer Preston, she said without preamble. She's running a story about you and Tyler. I know, I replied, struggling to keep my voice steady. She just emailed me. This has Tyler's fingerprints all over it, Harriet observed, echoing my own conclusion. He's trying to control the narrative before you can. Classic damage control tactic, get your version out first. What am I supposed to do? If I respond, I legitimize her story. If I don't, Tyler's version stands unchallenged. You fight fire with fire, Harriet replied firmly. But strategically, not reactively. Meaning? Meaning you don't just respond to her questions, you reshape the entire narrative. I could hear Harriet moving around, likely pacing as she formulated a plan. Preston isn't looking for the truth. She's looking for a juicy family scandal to sell papers. So give her something better. A story of corporate governance, of ethical leadership, of difficult decisions made to protect shareholders and employees. The wisdom of this approach immediately resonated. Tyler wanted a personal drama splashed across the society pages. I needed a business story on the financial pages. I'll need help crafting the response, I admitted. This isn't my area of expertise. Already on it, Harriet assured me. I'm contacting Anthony Ramirez, top crisis management consultant. Worked with 3 Fortune 500 CEOs during public relations disasters last year alone. He owes me a favor from when I helped his daughter get into Wharton. Harriet, I said, momentarily overwhelmed by her efficiency. I don't know how to thank you. "Thank me by stopping Tyler before he does any more damage," she replied. "This isn't just about your relationship anymore. This is about protecting your life's work." Within an hour, Anthony Ramirez had joined us in my apartment. A compact, intense man with salt and pepper hair and the focused demeanor of someone accustomed to navigating corporate battlefields. "First rule of crisis management," he began, setting up his laptop on my dining table. "Never let someone else define the story. Ms. Preston has framed this as a family drama. We need to reframe it as a corporate governance success story." "How exactly do we do that?" I asked, still struggling to see how my personal pain could be transformed into positive business news. "By emphasizing the systems that worked," Anthony explained. "Security protocols that identified unauthorized access. Corporate leadership making tough decisions to protect company interests. Succession planning that allowed for smooth transition during a difficult period." He began drafting a statement, fingers flying across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. "We won't deny what happened," he continued as he worked. "Denials just invite deeper investigation. Instead, we'll acknowledge the basic facts while redirecting the focus. Yes, your son is no longer with the company. Yes, there was an incident involving personal property. Yes, leadership changes were made. But these become evidence of Reynolds Real Estate's commitment to proper governance and accountability, not a tawdry family scandal." I watched over his shoulder as the statement took shape. Professional, measured, forward-looking. It acknowledged personnel changes in senior management and the implementation of standard security protocols following these changes, but provided no salacious details about my relationship with Tyler. "What about the private jet?" I asked. "That seems hard to spin as a corporate governance issue." Anthony smiled for the first time. "Actually, that's the easiest part. The expansion into European markets necessitated more efficient executive travel capabilities. The Milan deal was just the beginning of Reynolds' international growth strategy. The jet acquisition was a planned capital investment to facilitate this expansion, not an impulsive purchase or status symbol." I blinked, startled by how easily he had transformed what had been, in truth, a somewhat impulsive decision triggered by Olivia's smugness into a rational business strategy. "Is that ethical?" I questioned. "It feels like spinning the truth." "It's reframing, not spinning," he corrected. "The jet will be used for business travel to support your European expansion, won't it?" That part is true. The timing might have been influenced by personal factors, but the business justification is solid. By late afternoon, we had crafted a statement that acknowledged the basic facts while positioning Reynolds Real Estate as a company committed to proper governance, even when difficult personnel decisions involved family. Anthony also prepared me for a potential follow-up interview, drilling me on how to redirect probing personal questions back to business fundamentals. "Remember," he cautioned as he packed up his materials, "no matter what they ask, pivot to the strength of your leadership team, the success of the Milan deal, and the company's bright future. Personal details are off-limits. I don't comment on family matters should become your mantra." After he left, I sent the carefully crafted response to Jennifer Preston, then sat back, emotionally drained, but slightly more confident. Whatever story ran tomorrow would at least include my perspective, not just Tyler's narrative. "How are you holding up?" Harriet asked, pouring us each a glass of wine from a bottle Anthony had thoughtfully brought along. "Like I'm living someone else's life," I admitted. 2 weeks ago, I was in Milan closing the biggest deal of my career, excited to share the news with my son. Now I'm hiring private investigators and crisis management consultants to protect myself from him. "It's a lot," she acknowledged, "but you're handling it with more grace than most would." My phone buzzed with a text from Marissa. "Security system at headquarters updated. All locks changed. IT completing audit of Tyler's digital activities." I showed the message to Harriet. "The company at least is secure. Now I just have to worry about what else he might try personally." "Let Miranda's team handle that," Harriet advised. "You need to focus on running your company and preserving your public image. The rest will sort itself out." As if on cue, my phone rang. Miranda Jeffries. "Isabel," she began without preamble, "my team has found something you need to know about immediately. Are you somewhere private?" I put the phone on speaker so Harriet could hear. "Yes. What is it?" "We've been reviewing your financial records, focusing initially on accounts Tyler had direct access to. There's a pattern of irregular transfers from your personal accounts to an offshore LLC over the past 18 months. Small amounts initially, growing larger recently. The total is just over $2 million. The room seemed to tilt around me. $2 million? That's impossible. I would have noticed. The withdrawals were structured to avoid detection, Miranda explained. Timed to coincide with legitimate large transfers related to your business activities. When you're regularly moving millions between accounts, a few $100,000 here and there can blend into the background noise. An offshore LLC, Harriet repeated, her expression grim. That sounds like preparation, Miranda finished, setting up financial resources beyond easy reach. The pattern accelerated significantly 3 months ago, around the time you would have begun finalizing the Milan deal. The implications were staggering. Tyler hadn't just sold my car on impulse. He had been systematically siphoning money from my accounts for over a year, apparently preparing for, what? A clean break? Some kind of leverage play? Can we recover the funds? I asked, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. We're working on tracing the full chain of transfers, Miranda replied. But offshore accounts are designed specifically to make recovery difficult. I've alerted our financial crime specialist, who's joining the investigation tomorrow. After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence, the magnitude of Tyler's betrayal finally sinking in. This wasn't a son making a thoughtless mistake. This wasn't even an entitled adult taking advantage of parental generosity. This was calculated theft on a massive scale. Isabel? Harriet's voice broke through my shock. What do you want to do next? The question was simple, but the answer would define everything that followed. Did I continue treating this as a family matter, however painful? Or did I acknowledge what was becoming increasingly clear, that my son had crossed a line from which there might be no return? What do I want to do next? I repeated Harriet's question, my voice hollow. I want to wake up and discover this was all a nightmare. I want my son back, the one I thought I knew, not this stranger who's been stealing from me for years. Harriet's expression softened with compassion, but her words remained firm. That's not an option, Isabel. The question now is whether you're going to treat this as a family matter to be handled privately or a criminal matter to be handled by authorities. The stark choice hung in the air between us. $2 million. Systematic theft conducted over 18 months. This wasn't an impulsive mistake. It was calculated, deliberate betrayal. If it were anyone else, I said slowly, any other executive who had stolen from the company, any other person who had defrauded me personally, what would I do? You'd press charges, Harriet answered without hesitation. You've always been ruthless about ethical violations. It's why Reynolds has the reputation it does. She was right. Early in our company's history, Robert and I had discovered a senior manager embezzling funds. Despite the potential scandal, despite his tearful pleas about his family and reputation, we had reported him to authorities. It had been difficult but necessary, not just as justice, but as a clear message that integrity mattered at Reynolds Real Estate. But this is my son, I whispered, the words catching in my throat. Yes, Harriet acknowledged, which means the stakes are even higher. The choices you make now will define not just your relationship with Tyler, but your relationship with yourself. Can you live with letting this go? With sending the message that family ties excuse criminal behavior? My phone buzzed with a notification. An email from Davis Klein, my attorney. The subject line read simply, "Urgent, real estate forgery attempt." With trembling fingers, I opened it. Isabel, the county recorder's office, just contacted me. Someone attempted to file transfer documents on your Aspen property this afternoon, using what appears to be a forged power of attorney document. The clerk flagged it as suspicious because the notary seal didn't match their records. They've preserved the documents for potential criminal investigation. The individual who attempted to file the documents identified himself as Tyler Reynolds, claiming to be acting on your behalf. I recommend immediate action. Please call my office as soon as possible. Davis. I handed the phone to Harriet, unable to speak as she read the email. When she looked up, her expression had hardened. He tried to steal your house, she said flatly. Today, after everything else, the final thread of hope I'd been clinging to, that Tyler might come to his senses, that there might be some explanation that would make this all bearable, snapped cleanly. In its place arose a clarity I hadn't felt since discovering the BMW was gone. Call Miranda, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. Tell her to share all findings with the appropriate authorities. Call Davis and tell him to file whatever reports are necessary regarding the Aspen property. And call Anthony. We need to get ahead of this before it becomes public. Harriet nodded, already reaching for her phone. What about Tyler? He'll try to contact you once he realizes what's happening. Block his number, I replied. Block Olivia's too. Any communication can go through the attorneys from now on. As Harriet made the calls, I walked to the windows overlooking Central Park, watching dusk settle over the city. The pain in my chest was physical, as if something were being torn from me. In a way, it was. The identity I'd held for 32 years as Tyler's mother, as his protector and supporter, was being ripped away, replaced by something harder and colder. Victim, whistleblower, accuser. Yet beneath the pain lay something else, a bedrock of certainty that I was doing what needed to be done. Not out of vengeance, not out of anger, but out of respect for myself and the values I'd built my life around. My phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. I almost declined it, suspecting Tyler might be using someone else's phone to reach me, but something made me answer. Mrs. Reynolds, this is Detective James Morales, Financial Crimes Division, NYPD. We've received some concerning information from a private investigator named Miranda Jeffries regarding potentially fraudulent financial activities. Would you be available to come to the station tomorrow morning to discuss this matter? Yes, I replied, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. I'll be there. And Detective, I believe I'll have additional information to share regarding attempted property fraud as well. After hanging up, I returned to the dining table where Harriet was finishing her calls. The momentum of events felt both terrifying and inevitable now, like standing at the crest of a wave about to break. It's done, Harriet said simply. Miranda is cooperating with authorities. Davis is filing reports about the Aspen property. Anthony is preparing a statement for when this becomes public. Thank you, I said, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. For everything. Don't thank me yet, she replied grimly. This is just the beginning. Once the criminal process starts, it takes on a life of its own. Are you prepared for what that means? For seeing Tyler possibly arrested? For testifying against him if necessary? The questions hit me like physical blows, but I forced myself to consider them honestly. Could I stand in a courtroom and provide evidence against my own child? Could I endure the public spectacle of a trial, the media coverage, the inevitable questioning of my parenting and judgment? I don't know if I'm prepared, I admitted. But I know I couldn't live with myself if I didn't hold him accountable. Not anymore. My phone buzzed again, a text from an unknown number. Mom, it's Tyler. They're blocking my calls. Please talk to me. This is all a misunderstanding. I can explain everything. Think about the baby. Your grandchild needs me there, not in jail. Please. The naked manipulation, the attempt to use his unborn child as a shield, only reinforced my resolve. I showed the message to Harriet without responding to it. He's desperate, she observed, which makes him dangerous. You should consider security precautions. You think he might try something? The idea seemed absurd, despite everything. He's angry and entitled, but he's not violent. People do unpredictable things when cornered, Harriet replied, and Tyler is definitely cornered now. As if to underscore her point, my phone lit up with a call from Marissa Chen. Isabel, she said, her usually composed voice tight with tension. Tyler showed up at the office again. When security refused him entry, he became physical. They had to restrain him, and the police were called. He's been arrested for assault and trespassing. The final piece of my world collapsed inward. My son, Robert's son, in police custody for assault. How had we arrived at this unimaginable place? Thank you for letting me know, I managed. Is everyone all right? The security guard has minor injuries, a sprained wrist from the altercation. The company will cover all medical expenses, of course. After ending the call, I sat motionless, trying to process this latest development. Tyler's desperation had escalated to violence. The choices before me now were even starker than before. Isabel? Harriet's voice broke through my shock. What do you need right now? What did I need? Safety? Clarity? Some path forward through this nightmare that would allow me to look at myself in the mirror tomorrow. I need to make one more call, I said, reaching for my phone with new determination. To Olivia. Harriet raised an eyebrow. Are you sure that's wise? No, I admitted. But there's an innocent party in all this that we haven't considered fully. My grandchild. Whatever happens with Tyler, I need to make sure Olivia understands I don't hold her or the baby accountable for his actions. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe not ever. but it was the first small step toward whatever future awaited on the other side of this catastrophe. A future where, regardless of what happened with Tyler, I would not allow his actions to define the entirety of my family relationships. As I dialed Olivia's number, I felt the weight of decades of choices, mine and Tyler's, pressing down on me. But for the first time since this ordeal began, I also felt the faintest glimmer of something like hope, not for reconciliation or easy resolution, but for the possibility of rebuilding something honest from the ashes of what had been destroyed. 6 words had started this journey. I bought a jet, not a car. The next 6 would be even more consequential. I choose truth over comfortable lies. Olivia answered on the first ring, her voice wary. Isabel, I didn't expect to hear from you. I'm sure you didn't, I replied, keeping my tone neutral despite the emotions churning within me. I understand Tyler has been arrested. A sharp intake of breath. How did you... Never mind. Yes, they're processing him now. I'm at the police station. The background noise confirmed her location. Muffled announcements, phones ringing, the general bustle of a busy precinct. Olivia, I'm calling for one reason only. Whatever happens between Tyler and me, whatever legal consequences he faces for his actions, I want you to know that I don't hold you or your baby responsible. My grandchild is innocent in all this. The silence stretched so long, I thought she might have hung up. Finally, her voice returned, smaller somehow. You believe me? That I'm really pregnant? The question caught me off guard. Should I have reason not to? Another pause. Tyler told me to use the pregnancy to manipulate you. Said you'd back down from pressing charges if you thought your grandchild's father might go to jail. Her voice cracked slightly. But I really am pregnant, Isabel. 12 weeks. I have the ultrasound pictures to prove it. The calculated manipulation was so characteristic of the Tyler I was discovering, not the son I thought I knew, that it hardly surprised me anymore. But the fact that Olivia was confessing it did. Why are you telling me this? I asked carefully. Because I'm scared, she admitted, all pretense of sophistication stripped away. I'm pregnant. My husband might be going to jail, and I've just discovered he's been stealing millions of dollars. None of this is what I signed up for. And what exactly did you sign up for, Olivia? The question came out sharper than I intended, old resentments bubbling to the surface. The fantasy, she replied with unexpected candor. The successful husband, the beautiful home, the wealthy mother-in-law who would fund our lifestyle while we looked good on Instagram. A bitter laugh escaped her. I know how that sounds. Believe me, I'm not proud of it right now. Despite everything, I felt a reluctant flicker of respect for her honesty. Did you know about the theft? The offshore accounts? No, she said firmly. I knew Tyler was handling our finances, and I didn't ask questions when money appeared for trips or designer clothes. I didn't want to know where it came from. That was my mistake. It was the most authentic conversation we'd ever had. 3 years of strained politeness and mutual resentment had given way to raw truth in the crucible of crisis. What are you going to do now? I asked. I don't know, she admitted. Wait for Tyler to be released, I guess. Figure out how to pay for a lawyer. A pause. Isabel, did you really file criminal charges against your own son? The evidence was too substantial to ignore, I replied, sidestepping the direct question. $2 million, Olivia. Attempts to access my will fraudulently. Forged documents to transfer my Aspen property. This goes far beyond selling my car. I had no idea it was that bad, she said, her voice hollow. He told me you were overreacting about the BMW, that you'd get over it. I might have, I acknowledged, if that had been the end of it, but it wasn't. And now we all have to deal with the consequences. As our conversation wound down, I found myself offering something I hadn't planned, a lifeline of sorts. Olivia, whatever happens with Tyler, my offer stands. I won't hold you or the baby accountable for his actions. If you need support for medical care or anything related to my grandchild's well-being, you can contact me. Why would you do that? She asked, genuine confusion in her voice. After everything that's happened, after how I've treated you, because that's what family should do, I replied simply. Support each other through difficult times without enabling destructive behavior. Something I failed to understand with Tyler for too long. After hanging up, I turned to find Harriet watching me with a mixture of concern and admiration. That was generous of you, she observed, considering her role in all this. Her role was smaller than I thought, I replied. sharing the highlights of Olivia's confession. She was willfully ignorant, but not actively complicit in the theft. And you believe her? I considered the question seriously. Yes, her shock seemed genuine. And what would be her motive for lying now? Tyler's already been arrested. The damage is done. Harriet nodded slowly. So what happens next? Next, I meet with the detectives tomorrow morning. I provide whatever evidence they need, and I prepare for the public fallout when this inevitably becomes news. And Tyler? The question hit me like a physical blow. My son, my only child, now a stranger facing criminal charges for stealing from me. That depends on him, I said finally. On whether he accepts responsibility or continues denying and manipulating. On whether he's willing to make amends or insists on fighting. And if he does fight? Harriet pressed gently. If he claims you're persecuting him, turns your grandchild into a public sympathy prop, makes this ugly, then I'll stand my ground, I replied, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. I won't enable him anymore, Harriet, not even to avoid pain or public embarrassment. She reached across the table, squeezing my hand. I believe you, and for what it's worth, I think Robert would be proud. The mention of my late husband brought unexpected tears to my eyes. He saw this coming, didn't he? The entitlement, the lack of character. While I was busy feeling guilty about working too much, he was worried about the man Tyler was becoming. He saw warning signs, Harriet confirmed. But Isabel, neither of you could have predicted this level of betrayal. Don't torture yourself thinking you could have prevented it. My phone buzzed with an email notification. Anthony Ramirez sending the draft statement he'd prepared for when news of Tyler's arrest became public. The subject line read, Reynolds, CEO upholds corporate integrity despite personal cost. The narrative transformation was skillful, positioning me as a leader of principle, unwilling to apply different standards to family than to anyone else in the organization. It mentioned the difficult decision to cooperate with authorities and emphasized Reynolds Real Estate's unwavering commitment to ethical business practices at all levels. Not a word about the personal devastation I was experiencing. Nothing about the sleepless nights ahead, the questioning of every parenting decision I'd ever made, the grief for the relationship that might never be repaired. Just clean corporate language that transformed my personal tragedy into a business ethics case study. It's good, I acknowledged, forwarding the statement to Marissa with instructions to release it if news of Tyler's arrest broke overnight. Professional, appropriate. But, Harriet prompted, hearing the reservation in my voice, but it feels like I'm erasing the human element. The fact that this is my son, not just some executive who violated company policy. You're not erasing it, Harriet countered. You're compartmentalizing it. The public doesn't need or deserve access to your personal pain. That belongs to you alone. As evening deepened into night, we made plans for the days ahead. Harriet would accompany me to the police station tomorrow. Anthony would handle media inquiries. Miranda would continue her financial investigation, now in cooperation with law enforcement. And I would somehow find the strength to face whatever came next. You should try to get some sleep, Harriet advised as she prepared to leave. Tomorrow will be challenging. I nodded, though I doubted sleep would come easily. Thank you, Harriet. I don't know how I would have navigated this without you. She embraced me tightly. That's what found family is for, Isabel. The people who choose to stand by you when blood ties get complicated. After she left, I moved to the window, gazing out at the city lights blinking in the darkness. Somewhere out there, my son was in a police holding cell, facing the consequences of choices I still couldn't fully comprehend. My daughter-in-law was alone and pregnant, her Instagram perfect life suddenly shattered, and I was here, suspended between grief and resolve, between my identity as a mother and my integrity as a person. I bought a jet, not a car, I whispered to my reflection in the glass. 6 words that had changed everything. 6 words that had finally forced me to see the truth about my son, about myself, about the false peace I'd maintained through years of enabling. Whatever came next would be painful, but it would also be honest. And after decades of comfortable lies, that honesty, however difficult, felt like the first step toward healing. The morning dawned cold and clear, a crisp October day that belied the emotional storm I was weathering. I dressed carefully for my meeting with the detectives, choosing a conservative navy suit that projected composure I didn't feel. My fingers trembled slightly as I fastened pearl earrings, Robert's gift on our 25th anniversary. He should be here, I whispered to the empty room, a rare moment of vulnerability in the solitude of my apartment. He would know what to do, but Robert wasn't here. He hadn't been here for 8 years. And in his absence, I had allowed our son to become someone neither of us would have recognized. Harriet arrived precisely at 8, bringing coffee and a quiet strength that steadied me. We rode in silence to the police station, the gravity of what lay ahead hanging between us. Detective Morales met us in a small conference room, a surprisingly young man with intelligent eyes and a methodical manner. He was accompanied by a female officer who introduced herself as Detective Chen, specializing in financial crimes. "Mrs. Reynolds," Morales began, "I want to thank you for coming in. I understand how difficult this situation must be." I nodded, unable to trust my voice for a moment. "We've received the preliminary report from Ms. Jeffries' team," Detective Chen continued, opening a thick folder. "Combined with the information about the attempted property transfer in Aspen and yesterday's incident at your company headquarters, we have enough to proceed with formal charges against Tyler Reynolds." "What exactly are those charges?" I asked, forcing myself to face the reality head-on. "Grand larceny, fraud, forgery, assault, and criminal trespass," Morales listed dispassionately. "Given the dollar amounts involved, these are serious felonies." "I understand," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "What happens next?" "Tyler has been arraigned this morning. Bail is set at $1 million. Given the flight risk, specifically the offshore accounts we've identified, the judge set a high threshold. $1 million. An amount that would have been impossible for most people, but that I could easily provide." The unspoken question hung in the air. Would I? "Has he posted bail?" I asked instead. "Not yet," Chen replied. "He requested a public defender, which suggests he doesn't have immediate access to funds. Or he was manipulating again, trying to appear destitute to engender sympathy." I pushed the cynical thought away, disturbed by how quickly I'd come to expect the worst from my own child. The interview continued for nearly 2 hours as I provided detailed statements about the unauthorized transfers, the stolen BMW, the attempted property fraud, and the years of financial support I'd provided that contextualizes Tyler's actions. Harriet stayed beside me, her steady presence a lifeline as I recounted painful details of my son's betrayal to strangers. As we were concluding, Detective Morales slid a manila envelope across the table. "There's something else you should know, Mrs. Reynolds. During the standard search of your son's possessions upon arrest, officers found these documents." With trembling fingers, I opened the envelope. Inside were copies of what appeared to be medical records. My medical records, reports from my annual physical 6 months ago, notes from my doctor about mild hypertension, a recommendation for a cardiac stress test I'd never gotten around to scheduling. "I don't understand," I said, looking up in confusion. "Why would Tyler have these?" "We were hoping you might have some insight," Chen replied, watching my reaction carefully. "These were found along with several life insurance policies taken out in your name, with Tyler Reynolds listed as the sole beneficiary. Policies you apparently signed for last year." A cold dread washed through me. "I never signed any life insurance policies." The detectives exchanged glances. "That's what we suspected," Morales said quietly. "The signatures appear to match other forgeries we've identified. The implications were too horrible to contemplate. My son, my child, had not only been stealing from me, but potentially positioning himself to benefit from my death. We don't have evidence of any direct threat to your safety," Chen added quickly, seeing the color drain from my face. "But given these discoveries, we strongly recommend security precautions." I nodded mechanically, my mind still reeling from this final betrayal. "Of course." Outside the police station, I leaned against a concrete pillar, suddenly unsteady on my feet. Harriet gripped my elbow, supporting me. "Isabel, do you need to sit down?" "He was planning for my death," I said, the words tasting like ash. "My own son, gathering medical information, forging life insurance policies." "We don't know that for certain," Harriet cautioned, though her expression revealed her own shock. "There could be other explanations, but we both knew there weren't." "Not really. Not when combined with everything else we'd discovered." My phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. "They're saying Tyler won't be released today. Bail is set at $1 million. I don't have that kind of money." "What should I do?" "What indeed? Post bail for a son who had systematically betrayed me, who might have been contemplating worse? Or leave him in jail, knowing he was still my child, still the baby I had held in my arms 32 years ago?" You don't have to decide this minute, Harriet reminded me gently. Take some time, process what we just learned. I nodded, grateful for her wisdom. This decision couldn't be made from shock or emotion. It required the same clear-eyed assessment I'd bring to any critical business judgment. As we walked to the waiting car, a familiar voice called my name. Turning, I saw Olivia hurrying toward us, her designer handbag incongruous against the grim backdrop of the police station. "Isabel, please," she said, slightly breathless. "I need to talk to you." "This isn't a good time, Olivia," Harriet interjected, moving protectively closer to me. "It's important," Olivia insisted, her usual polished confidence replaced by genuine distress. "It's about Tyler, about things I found after he was arrested." Something in her expression gave me pause. "What things?" She glanced around nervously. "Not here. Can we go somewhere private?" 20 minutes later, we sat in a quiet corner of a nearby cafe, Olivia's hands trembling slightly as she placed a folder on the table between us. "I found these hidden in Tyler's home office last night," she said, pushing the folder toward me. "Behind the false bottom of a desk drawer. I was looking for our insurance information and found this instead." Inside were more documents, printouts of offshore account statements, records of transfers, and most disturbingly, a detailed inventory of my assets, complete with notes about which ones could be liquidated quickly and which might require more time. "There's more," Olivia said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Bank statements showing large transfers to someone named Marcus Fletcher over the past year." I looked him up. He's a disbarred attorney with fraud convictions. I stared at the evidence of my son's methodical betrayal, each page revealing a depth of calculation I still struggled to comprehend. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked finally, looking up to meet Olivia's gaze. "Because I need you to understand that I didn't know," she replied, tears filling her eyes. "I knew Tyler was financially irresponsible. I knew he depended on you too much. But this," she gestured at the documents, "this level of deception, of planning, I had no idea." For the first time, I truly believed her. The shock and betrayal in her expression mirrored what I'd felt discovering the BMW was gone. That initial moment when the foundation of trust crumbles, revealing something rotten beneath. "What will you do now?" I asked. She placed a protective hand on her still flat stomach. "I don't know. I can't stay with someone who would do this, but I can't pretend the baby doesn't change things either." She hesitated. "Isabel, I've been offered a modeling contract in London. 3 months of work starting next week. I was going to turn it down, but now, you're considering taking it," I finished for her. "Getting away while you figure things out." She nodded, relief evident that I understood. "Would that make me terrible? Leaving while he's facing charges?" "No," I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. "It would make you smart, self-protective, something I wish I'd been earlier with Tyler." Our eyes met in a moment of unexpected connection. Two women betrayed by the same man, trying to navigate the aftermath with whatever dignity we could salvage. "What about the bail?" she asked tentatively. "Are you going to post it?" The question I'd been avoiding crystallized before me. Was I willing to help Tyler avoid the immediate consequences of his actions? Could I justify that, knowing what I now knew? "No," I said finally. "I'm not posting bail. Tyler needs to understand that some bridges, once burned, can't be easily rebuilt." Olivia nodded, something like respect flickering in her eyes. "I understand. And Isabel, thank you for not hating me for my part in all this, for thinking of the baby despite everything." As she gathered her things to leave, I made an impulsive decision. The offer I made yesterday, about supporting you and the baby regardless of what happens with Tyler, it still stands. "Including help with getting to London, if that's what you decide." "Why would you do that?" she asked, echoing her question from our phone conversation. "Because moving forward requires breaking destructive patterns," I replied, "and because my grandchild deserves a fresh start, unburdened by their father's mistakes." After Olivia left, Harriet rejoined me, having tactfully given us privacy for our conversation. "Well?" she prompted. What did she want? I showed her the documents, watching her expression shift from curiosity to shock to grim understanding. "So now we know," she said finally. "This wasn't impulsive, wasn't a mistake, was premeditated," I finished. "Calculated, strategic." I took a deep breath, the weight of certainty settling over me. And now I know exactly what I need to do next. That evening, Alone in my Manhattan apartment, I faced the hardest decision of my life. The evidence was overwhelming, the betrayal complete. My son, the baby I had nursed, the child I had raised, the man I had enabled, had systematically stolen from me while potentially preparing for worse. The documents Olivia had discovered left no room for doubt or rationalization. I moved to my desk and opened my laptop, pulling up the document I'd been avoiding all day. The formal statement prepared by Davis Klein outlining my decision regarding Tyler's criminal case. It required only my signature to become official, my consent to fully cooperate with prosecutors, to testify if necessary, to stand against my own son in the interest of justice. My hand hovered over the keyboard, memories flooding through me unbidden. Tyler at 5, proudly showing me a drawing of our family. Tyler at 12, falling asleep against my shoulder on a rare evening when I'd made it home in time for bedtime stories. Tyler at 18, handsome in his graduation robe, the future still bright with promise. Where had that boy gone? At what point had he transformed into this stranger who could meticulously plot against his own mother? And how had I been so blind to it? My phone rang. Marissa Chen with an update from the office. The Milan expansion team needed decisions on staffing. The board wanted a statement about leadership transition plans. Life and business continued, regardless of my personal crisis. I'll send my recommendations tonight, I promised, grateful for the distraction of work, for problems that had clear solutions, unlike the moral quagmire of my family situation. After hanging up, I returned to the document, awaiting my electronic signature. The cursor blinked steadily, patient and indifferent to my turmoil. With a deep breath, I signed my name, formalizing my position. I would not shield Tyler from the consequences of his actions, no matter how painful the process. The moment I sent the document, a strange calm settled over me. Not peace. I was far from peace, but clarity. The path forward was difficult, but necessary. I would face whatever came next with the same resilience that had carried me through Robert's death, through building my company, through all the challenges that had shaped my life. My phone rang again, a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail, exhausted by the day's emotional demands. But something compelled me to answer. Mrs. Reynolds, this is Dr. Samuel Matthews from Bellevue Hospital. Your son, Tyler Reynolds, was brought in about an hour ago. My heart seemed to stop. What happened? Is he all right? He attempted self-harm while in custody, the doctor explained, his voice carefully neutral. The injuries are not life-threatening, but he's been placed on psychiatric hold for evaluation. I'll be right there, I said automatically, already reaching for my coat. Mrs. Reynolds? The doctor continued, I should warn you, he's specifically requested that you not be allowed to visit. He's an adult, so legally we must respect his wishes. The rejection stung, even after everything. I understand, but I'd like to come anyway, just to speak with his doctors if possible. Of course, ask for me when you arrive. The hospital corridors were harshly lit, antiseptic and impersonal, a fitting backdrop for this latest chapter in our family tragedy. Dr. Matthews met me in a small consultation room, his expression compassionate but professional. Mr. Reynolds is stable, he assured me. The attempt appears to have been more a cry for help than a serious suicide attempt, but we're taking all necessary precautions. Has he said anything? About why? I asked, though I already knew the answer. He's been speaking with our staff psychiatrist. Apparently, he learned today that additional charges were being filed related to identity theft and fraud. Something about life insurance policies? The doctor's questioning tone invited explanation, but I simply nodded, unwilling to detail the full scope of Tyler's betrayal to a stranger. Can I at least see him, even if he won't speak to me? Dr. Matthews hesitated. I can allow you to observe briefly from the nurse's station. Sometimes just seeing that family as present can be beneficial, even if the patient isn't ready for direct interaction. From behind the glass partition, I watched my son lying in a hospital bed, wrists bandaged, staring blankly at the ceiling. He looked smaller somehow, diminished, nothing like the confident executive who had once carried my hopes for the future of Reynolds Real Estate. Nothing like the smug son who had announced selling my BMW with casual entitlement. Just a lost, broken man facing the wreckage of choices he couldn't undo. I pressed my palm against the cold glass, the closest I could come to touching him. Despite everything, the theft, the lies, the calculated betrayal, he was still my child. My love for him remained, transformed, but undestroyed by his actions. Mrs. Reynolds? A different voice interrupted my vigil. I turned to find a woman in her 60s with silver hair and kind eyes. I'm Dr. Eleanor Winters, the attending psychiatrist. I've been speaking with your son. How is he? Really? Confused, angry, scared. She gestured toward a nearby seating area. May we talk for a moment? Once seated, she continued. Tyler has shared some of what's happened. The criminal charges, the evidence you've provided to authorities. He feels betrayed. He feels betrayed? I couldn't keep the incredulity from my voice. After what he's done? I'm not defending his actions, Dr. Winters clarified. I'm simply sharing his emotional perspective. In his mind, families should protect each other absolutely, regardless of behavior. The distortion was so profound, it momentarily took my breath away. Even when that behavior includes systematic theft and fraud, forged documents, potential life insurance fraud. As I said, I'm not defending it, just helping you understand where he is mentally right now. She studied me carefully. The question is, where are you? What do you hope for going forward? The simple question caught me off guard. What did I hope for? Reconciliation seemed impossible given the depth of betrayal, yet permanent estrangement from my only child felt equally unbearable. I want justice, I said finally, but I also want healing. I just don't know if both are possible. Dr. Winters nodded thoughtfully. They can be, but it's a long road, one that requires accountability first, reconciliation later, if ever. And it depends entirely on whether Tyler can acknowledge what he's done, not just the legal consequences, but the emotional damage. And will he? Can he? I asked, desperate for some professional insight into my son's capacity for genuine change. I don't know, she admitted. That's for him to decide. But I can tell you this, enabling him further, protecting him from consequences, would only hinder whatever potential for growth exists. Her words confirmed the path I'd already chosen. Difficult though it was, I would not bail Tyler out, literally or figuratively. I would not retract my cooperation with authorities. I would not pretend his betrayal was anything less than what it was. But I would also not close the door completely on some future reconciliation, should he ever truly face his actions and seek to make amends. As I left the hospital that night, the crisp autumn air filled my lungs, bringing with it a sense of possibility that had been absent in the suffocating aftermath of Tyler's betrayal. Tomorrow I would fly to Milan to personally oversee the next phase of our European expansion. Next month, I would visit Harriet in Paris, my first real vacation in years. And in the spring, God willing, I would welcome a grandchild, a new beginning amid so many painful endings. My phone buzzed with a text from Marissa. The jet is scheduled for final inspection tomorrow, ready for its first official flight whenever you are. I smiled, remembering the 6 words that had started this journey of painful discovery and unexpected liberation. I bought a jet, not a car. Simple words spoken in a moment of righteous anger, yet they had catalyzed a transformation I could never have anticipated. They had forced me to see the truth about my son, about my own enabling behavior, about the woman I wanted to be going forward. As I slid into the waiting car, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the window, tired but resolute, sadder but wiser, wounded but unbroken. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with legal proceedings, public scrutiny, and difficult emotions still to be processed. But for the first time since discovering my BMW missing, I felt genuinely optimistic about the future. My future, shaped by my choices, lived on my terms. Whatever happened with Tyler, whatever challenges awaited, I would face them with the clarity that comes from finally choosing truth over comfort, integrity over appearances, self-respect over enabling. The jet, after all, was just the beginning. The real journey was the one I had begun inside myself, a journey toward authenticity, toward boundaries, toward a life reclaimed from the shadows of grief and guilt. And despite everything, I was ready to soar. Thank you very much for watching. Share with those who also like stories, subscribe, and tell me in the comments if you liked my story. Cheers.